Okay, so I'll move on to my last question. I guess this is related to mesotheism. You write, despite the complete rationality of the case for the intelligent design of life, there is just no way to make that conclusion acceptable to people who want to believe science has disproved God. The truth is quite the opposite, which is distinctly uncomfortable for some. Perhaps this explains why some people react so viscerally. Not that idea is illegitimate, but that the opposite. It's painfully legitimate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy if you want atheism to be true. And by the way, I quote at some length. My favorite atheist writer is Thomas Nagel, and I quote him in the book. And he's someone, two things I like about him. He's a philosopher of mind, and he acknowledges that his atheism does not come out of science. It's not a rational thing. It's just a gut thing for him. He says um, he suffers from a cosmic authority problem. He doesn't want this to be a universe that has God over it. And I think that's just remarkably frank. And I love his honesty about that.
Mm.
Um, but he also recognizes the problems with materialism in that materialism and Darwinism cannot explain consciousness, cognition, and moral sense.
Mm.
Okay, so that's how he comes to his rejection of materialism, even though he's an atheist, and he took it a lot of flack for it. Oh, now I've diverged enough from your question. What were you asking me to comment on?
No, no, it was basically the way you end your book with a touch of
Oh,
mesotheism, where
why
people don't
people?
want to. Yeah.
Why there will be this visceral reaction? Um, yeah, I think if I were an atheist who were committed to atheism, I would not feel as though I need to reply or respond or comment on um, a very silly and goofy um, argument that God exists or that atheism is wrong. But the more intellectual depth an argument has, and the more apparent grounding it has in scientific investigation, the more uncomfortable I would be with it because now it's pushing up. Now I have to acknowledge it because it seems to be it seems to have a weight behind it that I can't ignore, and everyone else is going to see that I'm ignoring it if I do ignore, and they'll think I have no answer to this. So that's the sort of thing that would make me uncomfortable. And if you look at kind of the history of ID and how ID proponents have been treated, you see exactly this. You see people going ballistic at times when they feel as though the farm is in jeopardy. The whole game is going to be exposed, and that's the last thing you want to have happen. Then you try to find a way to deplatform or discredit or divert attention. And so there's a lot of this uh, not fair play, and I've been a victim of that. I lost my position in Cambridge at the Medical Research Council Center, and it was because it wasn't because the director was rabidly anti-design. It's because the director recognized um, there's a lot of pressure against this, and he didn't want to be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Understandably, because when things get ugly, and this isn't your issue, he just didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Mm.
So yeah, it gets ugly at times.
Yeah, I can imagine the pressure. I mean, if Dennis Noble's meeting in 2016, New Trends in Evolutionary Biology, if that nearly got cancelled, then what about someone working without the support of many of the fellows of the Royal Society? It would be a very tough
Yeah.
call. The last thing I want to ask you just before we end is Philip Johnson recommended your book, and he said it was a joy to read, and he found it very insightful. And one of the things I love about Johnson is because he was a lawyer, he liked to get to the core of the issue. And for him, it was always theism versus naturalism. Everything else was being colored by those perspectives. To end the stream, what is your thoughts on this? Is this the real issue for you still today?
Yes, and I think this is why um, plate tectonics was disruptive. Quantum theory was disruptive. There are all kinds of disruptive things that happen in science, but this is something that's not just disruptive to your scientific theory, it's disruptive to your view of reality, to your worldview. And that's far more disruptive because people sense that if design is right and naturalism, materialism is wrong, then we need to think about everything differently. And there's a moral component to it. So there's actually kind of a guilt thing that comes into play if you feel like, well, if those guys are right and I'm wrong, then I'm doing something wrong, something morally wrong. And that's a hard thing to swallow. So, yeah, I think it has that complexity to it. But you can't run away from things just because they're hard.